Almost every time I had a seizure, it was at night. I'd wake up, I'd feel it coming on. Like I'd run to my parents' room, or
He was the face of one of the most successful reality TV shows in history. The man who turned a Las Vegas pawn shop into an empire. But today, Rick Harrison's story has taken a shocking turn. With the sentence final, the world is left to ask, how did the king of Pawn Stars go from riches and fame to goodbye forever? Rick Harrison wasn't just the patriarch of the gold and silver pawn shop, he was its brand. Millions tuned in to watch Pawn Stars as Rick, alongside his son Corey and beloved sidekick Chumlee, negotiated cracked jokes and built an empire from dusty antiques and forgotten treasures. But away from the cameras, the story wasn't always so shiny. Lawsuits, family disputes, personal tragedies, and financial controversies followed Rick throughout his journey. And now, with his final sentence delivered, the curtain has fallen on a man whose public image was never as straightforward as it seemed. So how did Rick Harrison rise to the heights of reality television? And what led to the final chapter of his story? Long before the glitz of television, Rick Harrison's life was defined by grit and hustle. Born in Lexington, North Carolina in 1965, Rick faced struggles early on. He battled epilepsy as a child, which kept him out of school and left him searching for other ways to make his mark. By the time he was a teenager, Rick had already embraced the world of hustling. He bought and sold goods, constantly looking for opportunities to make a profit. That entrepreneurial spirit, paired with his father Richard "Old Man" Harrison's discipline, laid the foundation for the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, which opened in Las Vegas in 1989. At first, the pawn shop was just another small business in a city full of them. But Rick had vision. He wanted to transform the store into more than just a place for quick cash. He wanted it to become a destination. That vision paid off in 2009 when the History Channel launched Pawn Stars. The show was an instant hit, blending history lessons with entertainment as Rick and his team evaluated rare coins, Civil War memorabilia, classic cars, and bizarre oddities. Within a year, Rick was a household name. He wasn't just a pawn shop owner, he was a celebrity businessman, known for his sharp eye, tough negotiations, and dry humor. But as the empire grew, so did the cracks beneath the surface. What secrets were hiding behind the pawn shop counters? The success of Pawn Stars brought Rick wealth, fame, and recognition he had never imagined. The Gold and Silver Pawn Shop became one of Las Vegas's biggest tourist attractions, drawing thousands of visitors each day. Rick expanded his ventures, wrote books, and even opened restaurants. But fame often comes at a price. Behind the scenes, family drama began to unfold. His relationship with his son Corey, Big Hoss, wasn't always as smooth as it appeared on camera. Reports surfaced of tension over control of the business, money, and the direction of the show. Even more shocking was the feud that erupted after the passing of the Old Man in 2018. Richard Harrison had reportedly left most of his estate to Rick, cutting out one of his other sons. The decision sparked controversy and whispers of betrayal, casting a shadow over the tight-knit family image fans had come to love. At the same time, Rick's personal life faced turmoil. Multiple divorces, lawsuits, and public disputes chipped away at the polished reality TV persona. The man who seemed untouchable on television was, in reality, fighting battles on multiple fronts. And as the fame continued, the controversies only grew louder. Could Rick Harrison keep his empire intact, or was it already starting to crumble beneath him? As Pawn Stars skyrocketed in popularity, Rick Harrison's name became synonymous with success. But behind the bright lights of reality television, lawsuits began piling up. One of the most notable disputes came from within his own family. After the passing of Richard "Old Man" Harrison in 2018, one of Rick's brothers claimed that the will had been unfairly altered, leaving him out of the inheritance. The drama spilled into the public eye, painting Rick not just as a businessman, but as a man embroiled in bitter family conflict. Beyond family disputes, Rick also faced lawsuits tied to the pawn business itself. Customers accused the gold and silver pawn shop of unfair dealings, while others claimed items had been mishandled or undervalued. For a man whose reputation was built on being a fair but tough negotiator, these lawsuits threatened to tarnish the very image that made him famous. Legal challenges didn't stop at the pawn shop doors. In recent years, Rick's name has surfaced in lawsuits involving business deals gone wrong, property disputes, and financial disagreements. While many of these cases were settled quietly, the growing list painted a troubling picture. The king of pawn wasn't invincible. And as the lawsuits multiplied, so too did whispers of deeper scandals, the kind that couldn't be brushed aside with a settlement. What skeletons were waiting to be revealed from Rick Harrison's closet? While lawsuits were damaging, scandals threatened to unravel Rick Harrison's empire entirely. One recurring controversy surrounded the treatment of employees at the gold and silver pawn shop. Former staff members spoke out about harsh working conditions, low pay, and the pressure of constantly performing for television cameras. For fans who saw the shop as a quirky family business, these revelations were shocking. Then came the financial controversies. Rick's ventures outside of Pawn Stars, including restaurants and partnerships, didn't always succeed. Some ended in lawsuits, others in quiet closures, leaving investors and business partners pointing fingers. Each failed project chipped away at the aura of the savvy businessman that Rick had built on screen. And let's not forget the shadow of Chumlee's legal troubles. Though not directly tied to Rick, Chumlee's arrest in 2016 for drug and weapon charges cast a dark cloud over the Pawn Stars brand. Rick found himself forced to defend not only his shop, but also the integrity of the show itself. But perhaps the most damaging scandal was the perception that Rick had grown disconnected from the very values he preached on television. Fans who once admired his sharp eye for deals and grounded personality began to question whether the fame had changed him. The scandals piled high, and though Rick continued to appear on television, the cracks in his empire were now impossible to ignore. With legal troubles, family feuds, and scandals haunting his every move, one question loomed large. How much longer could Rick Harrison keep his empire standing? Success often hides sorrow, and in Rick Harrison's case, personal tragedy was never far away. The biggest blow came with the passing of his father, Richard "Old Man" Harrison, in 2018. Fans of Pawn Stars adored the old man's grumpy humor, sharp wit, and no-nonsense attitude. But for Rick, his father was more than a television personality. He was his mentor, business partner, and moral anchor. Losing him wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a turning point for the gold and silver pawn shop. Without the old man's presence, the show lost part of its magic, and Rick found himself carrying the burden of leadership alone. He became the sole figure responsible for both the business and the family legacy. The grief didn't stop there. Rick has spoken about the difficulties of managing family relationships under the harsh spotlight of fame. Divorce left scars, and strained ties with his children only deepened the sense of loss. For a man who seemed untouchable on camera, the reality was far more fragile. And then there were the financial tragedies. Ventures that crumbled, investments that vanished, and partnerships that soured. To the public, Rick was the man who always struck gold, but privately, he often gambled big and lost even bigger. It became clear that behind the smiles, the negotiations, and the cameras, Rick was a man weathering storm after storm. But the greatest storm was yet to come, one that would seal his fate forever. What sentence was about to change Rick Harrison's life for good? For years, Rick Harrison fought battles in courtrooms, boardrooms, and even within his own family. But when the final sentence came, it was one that left fans stunned. This wasn't the sentence of a judge sending him to prison, but rather the sentence of life itself. Rick's years of stress, controversy, and personal battles had taken their toll. His health became a growing concern, and whispers began circulating that he could no longer carry the weight of the empire he had built. The sentence was final. Rick Harrison would step back, leaving behind the pawn shop, the cameras, and the empire that defined his life. To some, it felt like a goodbye forever, the end of an era for both Pawn Stars and the gold and silver pawn shop. Fans who had watched Rick for over a decade were left in shock. Could the show survive without him? Could the shop carry on without the steady hand of the man who had turned it into a global phenomenon? For Rick, the decision was bittersweet. On one hand, he had achieved everything he once dreamed of: fame, fortune, and success. On the other, he knew that stepping away meant surrendering the identity he had carried for decades. The sentence was final. The King of Pawn Stars was closing his chapter. But what comes after goodbye forever? When news broke that Rick Harrison was stepping away, the ripple effects were immediate. The gold and silver pawn shop, once a buzzing tourist destination, began to change. Crowds still came to see the famous storefront, but without Rick's presence, the atmosphere wasn't the same. Corey Harrison, Big Hoss, took on more responsibility, but fans weren't sure if he had the same charisma or sharp negotiation skills as his father. Chumlee, despite his popularity, carried the baggage of his past controversies, leaving many to wonder if the pawn shop's reputation could withstand the absence of its patriarch. For some longtime fans, the magic of Pawn Stars felt tied directly to Rick himself. His humor, his business acumen, and his ability to turn an everyday pawn transaction into a moment of history. The fallout wasn't limited to the shop. The show's future hung in the balance. Could Pawn Stars continue without the man who built it? Producers debated whether to reshape the show around Corey and Chumlee, or whether it was time to let the series come to a natural close. And beyond the cameras, there was the family. The same fractures that had haunted Rick during his rise now resurfaced in his absence. Inheritances, business disputes, and personal grudges grew sharper as the glue holding everything together was suddenly gone. The world was left with a chilling realization. Without Rick, the empire he built might crumble faster than anyone expected. But even if his presence was gone, the question remained: what legacy did Rick Harrison leave behind? Rick Harrison's legacy is a complicated one. On one hand, he was the man who transformed a small Las Vegas pawn shop into a global brand. He turned negotiations into entertainment, antiques into history lessons, and everyday life into must-watch television. His vision brought joy to millions and gave the pawn business a newfound respect in popular culture. On the other hand, his legacy is clouded by controversy. Lawsuits, scandals, and family feuds left scars that will be debated long after he's gone. For every fan who remembers him as a savvy businessman and loving son, there will be critics who recall the disputes and battles that marked his later years. But perhaps the truest measure of his legacy lies not in the fame or the fortune, but in the lesson of resilience. Rick Harrison proved that even a man from humble beginnings, facing illness as a child and rejection as a young businessman, could build an empire with grit and vision. The sentence may be final, but Rick's story will continue to echo in Las Vegas, on television screens, and in the memories of fans who watched him turn everyday objects into extraordinary tales. The goodbye may be forever, but the legacy remains. Rick Harrison's story is one of triumph, controversy, and inevitability. He rose from obscurity to become a household name, only to be brought down by the very forces that so often haunt those who live in the spotlight: family conflict, scandal, and the relentless march of time. The sentence is final. Rick Harrison has stepped away, leaving behind the shop, the show, and the empire that defined his life. For fans, it feels like the end of an era, but for Rick, perhaps it is a chance to finally rest, to step out of the spotlight, and to find peace away from the cameras. So what do you think? Will Pawn Stars survive without its patriarch, or was Rick Harrison truly the heart and soul of the empire? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of the stars you thought you knew. Because behind every icon, there's a truth that changes everything.